And now, AM650 presents your source for leading-edge news and information on today's hottest products and services. This is Experts on Call on AM650.
Well, hello and welcome to the program. It's Key Pacific's Talk About Strata. I'm Stirling Fox. My co-host is the Executive Director of the Condominium Homeowners Association of British Columbia and Vancouver Province condo columnist Tony Gioventu. Nice to see you again.
Well, good evening, Sterling. How are you this evening?
I am well, thank you. I'm enjoying the spring, the blossoms. It's just a wonderful time of year. It's my favorite season.
Well, and we've got a great lineup because, you know, as the season comes into play, so do the home buyers. They start walking around looking at the open houses and all the new sales that are out there, and the gardens are blooming and everything looks great. So we have with us tonight Adrienne Murray, who is a lawyer in White Rock and who has years of experience with real estate and strata corporations to talk about buying into a strata.
Adrienne, welcome back. It's great to see you again.
Good evening. Thank you.
Let's talk about the myriad of options. If we're out there shopping, we're looking to downsize. It's the spring of 2013. It's time to downsize, to move ourselves away from that huge house with all the tasks and get into something that's a little less labor intensive. So there's a multiplicity of options, Tony and Adrienne. So why don't we go through the types of condos that people are typically looking at around Metro Vancouver and the island these days?
So we have bare land, which is, it looks like a conventional, for the most part, like a conventional subdivision. When you go in, each home is on a separate lot, and so when you're purchasing, what you're actually purchasing is exactly that, the bare land lot. That's your strata lot, and it shows like a subdivision boundary. The difference is that the whole project of maybe 10 or 50 or 200 lots that looks like a subdivision is entirely part of the same strata corporation. And so you will have in a bare land, you will have your own home, and generally properties that are not shown on the strata plan, so those are the homes that are built on the strata lots, are not the responsibility of the strata corporation.
Okay.
That's the point of a bare land. You have your own home, you maintain your own strata lot, you cut your own grass, you do your own gutters, you do those things. There can be some exceptions to that. We could have a bare land where everybody is looking exactly the same type of house, and the strata might have had bylaws adopted where they're going to take responsibility for some things. But for the most part, the big conception about bare land is, this is my own home. The difference, of course, between a regular conventional subdivision where I have my own lot and a bare land is all of those common assets and facilities within that strata are still going to be maintained by everybody based on their unit entitlement. Now, in a bare land, in almost every circumstance, everybody pays the same strata fees. There's the odd exception to that, but in almost every circumstance. So we'll talk in a while about the different kind of documents do you need to find out what your shares of costs are. So in a bare land, what people generally have to pay for as part of their strata fees is their insurance. They need to pay for snow removal of maintenance of roadways and parking lots and those things that are common. Clubhouses, landscaping and gardens that are common. We have a lot of big bare lands that are along golf courses, in farm-style bare lands where you have a lot of streams and rivers and there's maintenance that the strata has to pay for.
Okay.
And then, of course, the big thing that many people in bare lands don't understand is underground. All the services that deliver sewer and raw water to all the units that run through all the roadways, that's the responsibility of the strata corporation someday.
All right. So, Adrienne, if I'm looking around, doing a little house hunting, cruising the burbs and so on the weekends, and I drive past a nice subdivision, should I automatically begin to think, is this a bare land strata or are these individual lots? And if it is a bare land strata, are they required to advertise it as such so when I pull into this subdivision, I know what I'm getting into?
Well, it's a question you need to ask. Do they advertise it? Not often. And sometimes the seller, and I've run into situations where the realtor didn't even appreciate that it was within a strata. So the first thing you want to do is you want to look at the title of the property, and immediately you'll see it's an SL 1, 2, 10, 20. So you've got a strata lot. And that's when the questions have to start. So it's worth asking. I mean, as you drive down a main street, chances are the houses are individually titled.
Right.
But it's the first question to ask. what does the title look like on this property? Is it part of a strata? Because if it is, the questions then really need to be asked.
And you're shopping for an entirely different product, aren't you?
It's completely and it's interesting because I think a lot of people say, oh, well, it's a Bearland Strata, but I own my own home,
Yeah.
I'll be fine.
Right.
Well, it's not at all the same, and as Tony's saying, there's so many other issues, like a clubhouse, like the streams, like the requirement for landscaping. I've done bylaws for Bearland Stratas where the Strata Corporation has taken responsibility for all of the repair because they want everything to look identical. And so all of what you believe would be your normal options in terms of your flexibility, your ability to design and color, are gone completely. So it's certainly, there's many out there, I think probably a lot more than most people even appreciate, and it's a good question to ask right at the outset, so you know what you're getting into. As soon as they say, yes, it's a strata, and then we'll talk in a few minutes about the documents you're going to want to see.
Okay, so if you're shopping in subdivisions, be sure that you ask right up front, is this strata a strata property or arrangement or not? Tony, what else is on the list of possibilities beyond a bare land strata?
Well, the next phase, which looks like a bare land strata frequently, is where you actually have detached houses. But when you look at the plan, you realize that they are in fact like a townhouse development, except for they're not attached to each other. The exterior, the buildings, is actually in fact common property. And one of the reasons for doing that is because then the strata controls the look of the neighborhood. They
Right.
control the decorating and the maintenance, and there's a long-term plan for maintenance and those types of issues. But it is just like a normal strata in the sense that the Strata Corporation is going to be responsible for all the defined common property, which will include also things like exteriors of buildings, may include doors and windows on the building. It's going to include the siding and the roofing of the units, and it's going to be quite a bit more intensive. The gardens and the yards and the landscape areas may all be common property. So it's the next phase, but think of it more like a townhouse in the sense that the outside's the responsibility of the strata, the inside is my responsibility.
Okay.
You're going to see predominantly 3 different kinds of property on all stratas. You're going to see common property, which means it is the responsibility of the Strata Corporation for maintenance, repair, insurance, all the general control. You'll see limited common property, which generally means that it's common property, but it's for the exclusive use of one strata lot.
Okay.
So a back patio or a deck might be limited common property. And then the bylaws may say you have some responsibility for it, which is frequently just custodial. You have to sweep it, clean it, those kind of things.
Okay.
But look at the bylaws closely. And then the third is going to be the strata lot, and that's going to be shown on the strata plan as the defined boundaries.
Well, and I think it sounds very confusing, and I think the first question people ask, and it's, Sterling, your first question, well, if I drive into it, does it say
Exactly.
what it is? How do I
doesn't.
know? And I think there's 2 things that you need to do. You need to start by saying, what does the title look like? Does it reference a strata plan? And then if it does, take a look at the plan.
Right.
It's amazing to me the number of people that will actually buy a strata lot and not even have viewed the plan at any point in time. So the next
Because
most...
they get taken up in the
they
house.
just don't think it's important.
Oh, okay.
It's
All
not
right.
important.
All right.
But if I take a look at the title and then I take a look at the plan, I'll know immediately, is this a bare land strata plan or is this a detached building strata plan? Visibly, as I'm driving through the neighborhood,
Couldn't tell,
they
could
look
you?
the same.
Yeah.
They look and they look the same as a regular subdivision.
Right.
So then the way you need to know, or the way a buyer can know this and get a real appreciation for what they're looking at, is looking at the strata plan as almost the next step after asking what kind of a title.
Now, Tony, you write in the province every weekend, and that's when on the same day, they have all of their big real estate section and all the homes for sale and so on. Adrienne, in these ads, come and see this development in Langley or Victoria or wherever, are they required? Is there a legal requirement anywhere in that ad to say that this is a strata of some kind while you should come down and look at it? Even in the small print, don't they have to say anything about it?
Well, there's nobody that regulates the advertising. If we're talking about a new product, a developer must meet the requirements of the Real Estate Development Marketing Act. But if it's a resale product, there's no requirements. There's no law that talks about what needs to be put in an advertisement. The only thing that really guides us is you can't mislead.
Right.
As long as you haven't misled, it may be a little thin on facts. An interesting comment that I see a lot of people make is it's freehold. Well, that doesn't tell you, or fee simple.
Right, yeah.
That
I
doesn't,
see that a lot, actually.
well,
what
almost,
does that mean?
It means that you're basically owning a title as opposed to having a leasehold. But it really doesn't tell you whether it's a difference between a subdivision, a bare land, a detached, or a typical townhouse development, or an apartment style. So being fee simple really gives you very little information, but a lot of people like to say, well, it's fee simple.
It's fee simple. It sounds terribly legal,
It
and
does.
I sound like I actually know what I'm talking about. It's something you can throw around, but it really doesn't have a lot of substance to it.
It doesn't.
Tony, what else is on your list in terms of options for strata or condo buyers?
So we go from detached townhouses to conventional townhouses.
Oh, okay.
Right? And
row houses, right?
They look like row housing, and you'll find that in many of the developments, whether they're bare land, detached building type townhouse buildings, or attached townhouses, you're generally going to find that there's going to be a single entrance or a main entrance to the development.
Sure.
Right? It'll have a name to it. It'll be a Emerald Gardens, something, and it will generally have a central entrance area where there's visitor parking, and so it helps to identify it. But don't be misled by that, because there are certainly row houses and detached building type stratas in subdivisions around the province that look exactly like a conventional house on a block like any other property. So they don't all have collective entries and parking areas for visitors and those types of issues. They look just like a typical neighborhood. So, but it helps to identify it when you drive into a neighborhood. Townhouse development is basically where you have attached row housing. Each unit have their own independent entrance. Units
Usually a garage or a carport of some kind?
They have garages or carports, and there's a lot of misleading information around garages and carports, but they will have their own garages and carports. The Strata Corporation is responsible for common property, which generally means, and I'll use the word generally because they're not all created identically, but generally means that once you've identified the boundaries on the common property of the Strata Plan, that's going to be the responsibility of the Strata to maintain and repair. So those are not going to be your responsibilities as a homeowner. But I mentioned that parking spaces, there's misleading information around parking garages. An assumption is made frequently that the garage is part of the strata lot of the townhouse.
Yeah.
And it occasionally, or almost always, is not.
Really?
It's almost always limited common property or common property. It's not living space. It's a garage. The strata lot boundaries are living space, and that's what the unit entitlement, the measured size, is based on.
Even if it's a drive-into thing with a stairway inside that takes you up into the house, because you don't live in your garage, it's common property.
It could be part of the strata lot, depending on the strata plan, but for the most part, you'll find they're limited common property or common property. And how we identified those things over time has changed. So you may find quite frequently that in older developments that the garage area is actually part of the strata lot, whereas you'll find in newer developments that there'll be limited common property or common property and not part of the strata lot. So again, strata plan.
Adrienne's advice: ask questions.
For
crying out loud, ask questions. If you're not sure, don't assume. And I think that's the problem. A lot of people just, it must come with a garage.
They don't even realize that they're not sure. They assume.
Right.
They just assume. I saw it once this way. This is the way it must be. And if you haven't seen a variety of developments, as Tony and I have, that's it's not an unreasonable assumption, but the most important part is to understand there is no standard.
Right.
There is no commonality here. You're going to go from part of a strata lot to common property to limit common property. I've got one development in the Okanagan. We've got limited common property garages and garages that are part of a strata lot.
In the same complex.
In the same development.
Oh, for goodness sake.
Yeah.
So
just to keep everybody really confused.
You
Exactly.
bet. You bet. I'm sure there was some reason at some point, but it's escaped us all, I have to tell you. So again, it's all on the strata plan.
We need to take a break, but Tony, we've gone through quite a list of the options available as we jump in our cars and buzz around checking out alternative living options. Is the only strata option left on your list the apartment style?
There'll be apartment style, and they're going to be, and this is for strata living. This is not commercial property. So this is residential homes. You're going to live in it. You may buy it as an investment, as a rental, but it is something that we're now talking about apartments, low-rise, 4 floors and under, which are almost generally combustible wood frame construction.
Sure, yeah.
We now have new developments that are 5 and 6 floors that are wood frame construction under the new building code. And then, of course, mid-rise to high-rise, or which are going to be 6 floors up that are concrete construction. And so there's quite a difference in the nature of the type of buildings.
And here you were thinking about maybe just jumping in the car this weekend and popping around town and having a look at a couple of condo possibilities. Now you discover they're not just a couple of condo possibilities. They're all sorts of strata options. So we've just confused the issue a little bit. But on the other side of that coin, it's kind of fun to get out there in nice spring weather and look at all sorts of different things, especially if you're really tuned for a change this year. You're listening to Key Pacific's Talk About Strata. He's Tony Gioventu. I'm Stirling Fox. Our guest is Adrienne Murray, and we'll be right back.
There's still more ahead with Experts on Call, the show focused on delivering relevant and beneficial consumer information. This is Experts on Call on AM 650.